Good morning, everybody. How are we doing this wonderful, wonderful day? Waiting for our first audio engineer to show up and tell us how the sound is doing. Hey, Andy, good morning. How's things in Tucson? You're the first on deck today, so I'm going to count on you to be our audio engineer. We've got, can you hear me okay this morning, Andy? Is the audio okay? Thank you, Andy. Jim Hinckley's America. Jim Hinckley's America. Hey, good morning, mi amigos. I will make a very valiant attempt to keep to the half-hour schedule this morning so I don't wear out my welcome. But that's going to be quite the challenge, as this morning I'm talking about a Route 66 adventure in New Mexico, the Land of Enchantment. And to be honest, of the 8 states that constitute the Route 66 corridor, New Mexico could easily consume an entire vacation or 2 or 3. There's just so much to see along Route 66. And if you add a short detour or 2, well, you could easily spend a month or more exploring this wonderful, wonderful area. We're going to start this morning's program with a teaser. A Route 66 adventure is all about choices. And we got to keep in mind it's always impossible to see everything. So just accept the fact that you'll need to come back a time or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times. You need to make choices and be satisfied with the choices made. And that really is the case with a New Mexico Route 66 adventure. For those that joined us last Sunday, the program ended at the state line in the ghost town of Glen Rio. So when you cross the state line into New Mexico, you're immediately faced with 2 options. One is to jump back on I-40 and follow that highway to the first exit. And here you can follow the later alignment of Route 66 into San Juan, make a stop at Russell's Truck and Travel Center. This is much more than just another truck stop. In the back is an expansive free car museum, amply salted with artifacts from Route 66, Glen Rio, and ND. If you choose to follow the earlier alignment of Route 66 west from Glen Rio, the pavement ends just past the state line. From there, almost all the way to San Juan, the old highway is a graded gravel road. Give thought to the weather and keep in mind that if it's been rainy, this old road can be just a tad bit muddy. And snow adds a whole new dimension to the adventure. For me, a highlight of this drive is the old town of ND. Now, this is a true ghost town, population 0. John and George Day established the letter N, and the letter D, the ND Ranch near here in 1882. And then a small supply center was established as the town of ND, E-N-D-E-E. And a post office opened under that name in 1886. The post office closed in 1955, 3 years after Route 66 was realigned and the town was bypassed. In Jack Rittenhouse, in the book by Jack Rittenhouse, A Guide to Route 66, published in 1946, he noted that the village consisted of a school, as well as a garage, gas station, general store, and a handful of cabins at an auto court. And the old town figures in 2 very interesting stories. In 1906, a band of rustlers led by John Fife and Tom Darlington, they were hiding out in ND. A posse from Tucumcari captured them there. This was the last use of a horse-mounted posse in the New Mexico Territory. In 1909, a band of drunk, masked cowboys rode their horses into the saloon while firing guns to break up a meeting of the local Temperance League. There's you go. 2 opportunities to fill your head with useless knowledge right out of the gate this morning. So how's that for a teaser to kick off this morning's episode of Coffee with Jim? Okay. Now, let's take care of business. I want to give a shout out to the boys of the Road Crew for our theme song. And as we're talking road trip inspiration this morning, take a listen to the music of the Road Crew at roadcrew66.com and spark some dreams of adventure on the open road. And next up, I want to give a hearty thank you to the fine folks at the Cactus Inn in McLean, Texas. They've signed on as a sponsor of the Route 66 Texas page on our website, jimhinckleysamerica.com. This historic motel dates to about 1956 and is passionately being refurbished. Much of the work was completed during the year of the apocalypse, 2020. As a bonus, guests staying at the motel are within spitting distance of the wonderful Red River Steakhouse. I highly, highly recommend that. And on the 13th, 1 o'clock, I believe, Mountain Standard Time, the Cactus Inn Angela will be giving a virtual tour of the motel. You won't want to miss that. And now I need to give a shout out to a few of our sponsors. We start with Victoria Sugar Shack in Kingman, Arizona. This is my go-to place for a sweet treat and favorite date spot with my dearest friend. I want to give a shout out to Gilligan's Route 66 Tours. Fully guided tours are their specialty, but the owners have also developed an innovative self-drive tour option that allows you to travel on your schedule, but with all the benefits of a guided tour including rental car and motel reservations. Then we have the quirky, fun, ribald, entertaining roadside attraction that is Uranus Fudge Company and General Store. The fudge is delicious. And last but not least, a shout out to the iconic Wagon Wheel Motel in Cuba, Missouri, where the past and present blend seamlessly. Next up this morning, our trivia contest. Remember, the first right answer will win a signed copy of 100 Things to Do on Route 66 Before You Die. We did not have a correct answer last week. The wildest town on Route 66, the town where the general store was robbed twice in one day and 5 times in 1 month, was Wildorado, Texas. Okay, today's trivia contest. His career was just taking off. He was making appearances in Las Vegas, and he was starting to pal around with a wild group of crooners with a very rowdy reputation. It almost came to an abrupt end with a car accident on Route 66. He suffered an array of serious injuries, including the loss of an eye. What is the name of that celebrity? Okay. Let's get our Route 66 adventure in New Mexico underway. As I mentioned when we got started with this series, there just isn't enough time to fully share all of the attractions along Route 66 in a state during a half-hour program. And this is going to be even more challenging today as we are talking about New Mexico. Let's start with the Blue Swallow Motel in Tucumcari. This could very well be the most famous and most photographed motel on Route 66. It's been lovingly refurbished and maintained, and this treasure dates to 1939. It is a neon-lit living time capsule, carefully wrapped in modern amenities. It's a real treasure and a delight. But that is only one of the time capsules in Tucumcari. At the Roadrunner Lodge, the owners have gone to great lengths to recreate a luxury hotel circa 1964. But there's something else that makes this property very special. The Roadrunner Lodge Motel was originally two different properties. The older portion on the west side was built in 1947 as La Plaza Court. Agnes Leatherwood opened Leatherwood Manor on the east side in 1964. The two motels were run as separate properties before they were combined into a single unit under one roof. Never judge a book by its cover. You know, that's a great adage, and it really sums up Tucumcari quite nicely. When you roll into town, especially from the west on Route 66, you will have a sense that you just stumbled into a movie set for some apocalyptic film. It's just not a pretty picture. Abandoned truck stops, burned out motel. But this is a town filled with passionate people. They have an intent on preserving history and to providing visitors with a wonderful as well as memorable experience. The Motel Safari that you see there at the bottom, that's all been restored, renovated. That is a great 1960 time capsule, by the way. But there are also some really interesting, fascinating, and surprising attractions to be found in Tucumcari. The renovated railroad depot has an excellent museum. The visitor center has a great Route 66 museum. But the real surprise is the Mesa Lands Community College Dinosaur Museum and Natural Sciences Laboratory. Believe it or not, but this facility and its exhibits, they're really worthy of the Smithsonian Institute. They are really spectacular. From Tucumcari, you have two very distinct options. One is to follow I-40 and explore truncated alignments of Route 66 to Santa Rosa and all the way into Albuquerque. There are some interesting ruins and ghost towns to keep it interesting. And, of course, Santa Rosa and Moriarty, they all have some pretty fascinating things. Or, from Santa Rosa, you can continue north on US 84, which roughly follows the course for pre-1937 Route 66. I have to suggest a detour. Highway 104. This rates really high on one of my top drives in the country. It is a 100-mile scenic drive of epic proportions. There's a couple ghost towns, breathtaking scenery, and it connects Tucumcari with the original Las Vegas. Now, Las Vegas, New Mexico was never on Route 66. However, it was on the National Old Trails Road and the Santa Fe Trail. And as before the Route 66 realignment of 1937, the town was about a dozen miles from the highway. And so you can bet money that travelers made the little side trip. And I cannot say enough about Las Vegas. My dearest friend and I have been tempted on more than one occasion to pull stakes and call this amazing and vibrant town home. The people really have a passion for this town, and it shows. The town is less than 15,000 people, but they have more than 1,000 buildings on the National Register of Historic Places. They have an operational drive-in theater, and there's so much history and so many fantastic restaurants. Take a look at this block of buildings on your screen. The red brick building is the renovated Plaza Hotel and Saloon that dates to the 1880s. The street out front is the Santa Fe Trail. The saloon has an association with Doc Holliday. See the little single-story buildings to your right? They date to the 1830s or 1840s. General Kearny stood on the parapet after the Mexican-American War and addressed people standing in the plaza. He informed them that the territory was now part of the United States. And Bridge Street, this runs to the plaza in front of the Plaza Hotel. So at the bottom of the hill is a circa 1914 bridge and a monument that commemorates the Coronado expedition in the 1540s. Those folks crossed the river and camped at this point. And then ringing the entire plaza are buildings built between the late 1830s and the 1890s. There's even a drugstore that still has a soda fountain. And southwest of Las Vegas is the ghost town of Romeroville, named for a wild and colorful character named Don Trinidad Romero. This monument was built there to mark the end of the Ozark Trail, an early automobile highway like National Old Trails Road, Jefferson Highway, those kind of things. And Romero built an expansive home on his ranch at Romeroville and hosted an array of celebrities and even presidents like President Grant, General Sherman. Quite a place. Here's a little tidbit for you. When the railroad arrived south of town, the Plaza District became known as Old Las Vegas, and a new town was built a few miles to the south. The two towns remained separate into the 1960s. The new Las Vegas is also a treasure trove of historic buildings, including service stations, automobile dealerships, hotels, and office blocks built between 1880 and 1930. The crown jewel is the recently refurbished Castaneda Hotel that reopened in 2019 after a more than 6-decade closure. The fellow behind this, Mr. Affelt, is the fellow, for those who might be familiar with the La Posada in Winslow, he's the fellow who restored that property as well. This hotel, the Castaneda, it originally opened in 1899. It was the first of the great Harvey Railroad hotels. Teddy Roosevelt kicked off the recruitment drive for the Rough Riders at this hotel. And after the Spanish-American War, he hosted a reunion for the Rough Riders at the Castaneda. Edsel Ford and his friends stayed here during their trip along the National Old Trails Road in 1915. And Emily Post was also a guest. The drive west along the pre-1937 alignment of Route 66 is spectacular. It is a journey through time. The bonus is that this is really beautiful country that just simply begs the traveler to stop, to take in and smell the clean pine-scented air, and to break out the picnic basket, especially in the summer. Winter's a little bit different story. It gets a tad bit cold up in the high country. One example of the history found along this highway is the little village of San Jose that dates to 1803. The chapel, built there about 1820, another little treasure, Pecos National Historic Park, near the town of Pecos. Miles and miles of scenic trails. But the focal point is the picturesque and expansive ruins, framed by majestic landscapes. When Spanish explorers arrived in the 16th century, this large trading center was the biggest city they had encountered north of Mexico. Archaeological evidence indicates that initial settlement commenced in about around 800 AD. How's that for old? At its peak in about 1450, the population is estimated to have been in excess of 2,000 people. The walls of stone stood 5 stories tall, and it made the village an easily defensible fortress. The Spanish expeditionary notes of 1584 indicate that it was enclosed on 2 sides by streams And here we go. Now this is another one. This is just another example of what this drive on the pre-1937 alignment of Route 66 is all about. This is the Pigeon Ranch. It's an adobe structure preserved in a state of arrested decay. It was a hostelry on the Santa Fe Trail, established in the 1850s by a French Canadian that spoke Pidgin English. Kind of a broken English is what a slang term for. Well, during the Battle of Glorieta Pass in 1861, this building served as a field hospital. In the era of the National Old Trails Highway, National Old Trails Road, and Route 66, it was a tourist attraction. And right across the highway, often missed, but over by the tree there, is an old stone well. No one knows how old it is, but the Spanish explorers in the 1580s noted its existence. An abandoned pueblo was located on this site when the Spanish relocated the capital and began construction in about 1608. There's just so much to see and do in Santa Fe. I could easily dedicate an entire program to this amazing city. When Emily Post came through in 1915 and other travelers, they noted the unique feel, the cultural vibrancy, the dynamic of the city. And attractions. Consider this. The San Miguel Mission that incorporated a part of a 12th century pueblo in its construction is the oldest continuously operated church in the United States. It dates to 1610. The Palace of the Governors, that is now a museum, well, that dates to about 1680. And, well, here's another little opportunity to fill your head with a bit of useless knowledge. While governor of the territory, Lew Wallace wrote Ben-Hur here. And an inn, or a fonda, has stood at the southwest corner of the plaza since 1610. The latest incarnation is the beautiful La Fonda, built as a Harvey House hotel in 1922. And for the Route 66 enthusiast, or anyone just enjoys a pleasant night stay in a historic setting, surrounded by a park, the El Rey Inn that opened in 1836, that is my destination at the end of a long day. Fully renovated and landscaped, this is a true oasis for the worried. But the ancient villages and the scenic wonders along the way will have you stopping often. Now, let's get back to Tucumcari and I-40, Route 66, the truncated alignments that run to Albuquerque, the post-1937. If you chose to follow I-40 and Route 66 west to Santa Rosa, then to Albuquerque, you got to consider a stop at the Blue Hole. The oasis that is the Blue Hole is located along the original alignment of Route 66 in Santa Rosa. And it's one of the few roadside attractions that is exactly as advertised. It is a deep blue hole. It's one of 7 sister lakes connected underground by a vast system of water and part of the city's 2-park system. Visibility is an astonishing 100 feet because the water Continuing west to Albuquerque and on to Arizona is largely a drive on I-40 as much as Route 66 was buried by that highway, or some simply short truncated sections. Still, there are lots of tangible links to that old highway, and there are a few ghost towns. Here's one to consider, Klein's Corner. In appearance, it's simply a modern full-service truck plaza and travel center. But its origins are much older. It began as a service station opened by Roy Klein in 1937. The Longhorn Ranch and other classic roadside attractions are now mostly scattered ruins along the highway, but a few businesses have survived into the modern era. One that I highly recommend is in Moriarty. The Pogue family has managed the Sunset Motel since 1959. Their pride in ownership is evident. And for me, it's one of the few big cities that I feel somewhat comfortable in. Central Avenue is the post-1937 Route 66 corridor. 4th Street is the north-south corridor for the earlier alignment that ran through Santa Fe. Both sections are peppered with vestiges from the pre-interstate highway era. Restored motels, down at the heels motels with vintage signage, great diners and cafes such as Loyola's. You saw that featured several times in the Breaking Bad series and Better Call Saul. I also recommend Caps. The Monte Carlo Steakhouse, that is an intriguing place. It's one of the most fascinating restaurants that I've been introduced to in a very long time, and I want to thank Amanda Brenner for introducing us. It's hidden behind a seedy appearing liquor store. You literally walk in the liquor store and then through the back by the freezers to the steakhouse. As we are really running out of time this morning, like I said, this is going to be a special extended program. I'm going to save Albuquerque. Finish the 8-state Route 66 series with California. This was the scene of a horrendous Route 66 accident when a Pickwick bus was struck by a freight train at the crossing. Motoring west while alternating between I-40 and Route 66, there are just so many sights and attractions. I'm not exaggerating. You can easily fill a week or two. And if you add a detour to places such as El Morro or the Bandolera Ice Caves, God, you could spend weeks and weeks exploring this area. But keep in mind, a lot of this is reservation. And the reservations have very strict regulations pertaining to photography. And keep in mind, please, that many of these ancient villages, they're people's homes. So show a little bit of respect, a little bit of class. And there's lots of photo ops as well. The further west you travel, the more dramatic the landscapes become. And there's also a few sites associated with macabre history in western New Mexico, such as the murder of H.N. Bud Rice at Budville, and the mysterious murder of a Santa Monica man west of the trading post. His body was left along Route 66. I chronicle a lot of those stories in my book, Murder in Mayhem on the Main Street of America, Tales from Bloody 66. I chronicle the story of Bud Rice and other murders in this area. And little plug, shameless self-promotion. You can order that copy of the book signed on the Jim Hinckley's America website at jimhinckleysamerica.com. Hey, how do you like that sign there in San Fidel? San Fidel, New Mexico, Geezerville. And speaking of detours, I highly recommend a short detour off Route 66, a dozen or so miles, to Acoma. This is the cultural center itself is very fascinating. But for me, the highlight is a tour of the village up on the top of the mesa. There's archaeological evidence that people have been calling this home for almost 1,000 years. This is the oldest continuously inhabited community in the United States. And as I mentioned, there are an array of new and old tourist traps and trading posts along the way. If nothing else, stop. Stretch the legs. Drive a little truncated segment of Route 66. Get a picture of a Whiting Brothers sign. Grab an ice cream. Take in the sights. Make some memorable photos and some memories. One more before I forget. I almost forgot to mention Grants. Grants, New Mexico, definitely looks a bit tired when viewed from the Route 66 corridor. But do not miss the Mining Museum. I got to tell you, it is absolutely stellar. The attention to detail and the way it's just, I won't spoil the surprise, but that is a museum, excuse me, not to be missed. And this takes us to Gallup. Again, way too many attractions to note in just one program. As an example, Richardson's Trading Company that opened in 1913. This is the real deal. This is not a tourist trap. It is an authentic Western trading post with Navajo rugs and an array of handcrafted items for sale. That is a place that should really, it's well worth a visit. I also recommend Earl's Restaurant that opened in 1948. One of the highlights is, just as when I was a kid, they allow the Native Americans to sell jewelry and things under the portico out front, and unless you request not to be bothered, they will allow traders to come to your table and sell their wares. And it's really an experience. I also recommend Jessica's Restaurant, located in the Cultural Center. If nothing else, just drive the main streets. This is the downtown, the historic district of Gallup is vibrant and fascinating. It retains much of its 1950s feel, and because of the strong Native American presence, it has a unique cultural dynamic that makes it a very, very interesting town. And, of course, speaking of Gallup, I would be very remiss if a shout out wasn't given to the El Rancho. This was built by D.W. Griffith's brother in the late 1930s. It was billed as the world's largest ranch house. With hundreds of motion pictures filmed in the area during the 1940s and 50s, the hotel with its restaurant and bar became a de facto headquarters for movie companies. The mezzanine above the lobby is lined with hundreds of autographed pictures of celebrities that have The highway is a corridor through towering bluffs, colorful red rock bluffs lined with old trading posts. This one you see here is almost on the state line. This was originally the Cave of the Seven Devils trading post. For the Route 66 enthusiast that's familiar with two guns, here's a great story for you. This trading post was established by Harry Indian Miller shortly after he was acquitted for the murder of Earl Cundriff at Two Guns, Arizona. And in 1951, an expansive movie set that mimicked a large Pueblo ruin was built here for the movie Ace in the Hole starring Kirk Douglas. Great movie. I highly recommend it. There's I didn't wear out my welcome this morning. There is just so much to see and to share along Route 66 in New Mexico. I just couldn't keep it to a half hour. And I could easily create another program or two about a Route 66 adventure in the Land of Enchantment. And as I mentioned, we're going to go back and revisit Albuquerque in a few weeks. There's some stuff there I really think you're going to like. I need to share with you. I want to share with you that steakhouse hidden in a liquor store. Telling people where to go is what I do, and it's what I enjoy. I do hope that you enjoyed this vicarious adventure. And even better, I hope I've inspired a road trip or two. Next week on Coffee with Jim, we're going to continue our westward Route 66 adventure with a tour through the state of Arizona, with a detour or two. I promise this will also be a grand adventure. And I also am going to try to keep that to a half hour as well. I want to before I get to the answering questions and wrapping up this morning's episode of Coffee with Jim, I want to tell you about a very special program that has been scheduled for the afternoon of February 13th, 2 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. Details are on the Jim Hinckley's America Facebook page. In this pay-per-view program, I will be sharing an interesting love story, a 500-year fascination with the great American Southwest. It is a tale of tragedy and lost treasure, adventuresome explorers, marketing geniuses, artists, dreamers, and lost civilizations. I don't think you're going to want to miss this program. If you're fascinated with John Wayne movies, the great landscapes of the West, the native people, and road trips, you won't want to miss this program. And now my parting thought of the day. Folks, more than ever, it's important that you do a bit of homework. Turn off that TV. Pick up a book. Challenge yourself to think. There are folks out there that are honing the art of crafting division for profit and gain. And wolves are among the sheep. They're banking on their ability to snow you. My friends, be I was kind of rushed here, and I was trying to want to answer your questions. And so before I wrap this up, let's get this thing, see what we got. We've got Andy with us this morning, all the way from Tucson, Arizona. Frank from snowy Illinois. Well, we're about done with our winter here, Frank. We had a week of it. It's going to be up around 60 most of the week, 55 to 60. Sandra, good morning. Clemens, Sandra and Clemens both, all the way from Netherlands. Bill, I'm glad to hear that. Brian, good morning. The nickname Father Route 66, that would be Cyrus Avery out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Keith, good morning. Dries, my friend Dries Bessel's joined us this morning. Good morning, Dries. Yes, Uranus, where juvenile humor runs. Well, Mr. Nolan. Let's see, who got this right? Well, we got a herd of them, but Nolan, Frank, Andy, you come in at 30 minutes with the right answer. And Keith Kentner beat you by 1 minute. Keith Kentner has the right answer 29 minutes into the program. So does Bill Ouellette. So we've got two winners this morning, Keith and Bill. Keith, I know how to get a hold of you. Bill, if you can send me your address on Messenger, I will get a copy of that book out to you. Brian, that's an interesting bit of trivia. I was not aware of that. Mr. Termel, how are you doing today? Yeah, Frank, that museum, it is a first-rate natural history museum, and it really is surprising. Even the building is very nondescript. The drive-in theaters, I'll see if I can round it up. There is one in Colorado that they built kind of down in a bowl, and then they built a motel up on the hill with picture windows facing the screen, so people could actually stay in the motel and watch the movies and have sound in the room. And there was another one down towards Baghdad, Arizona, down southern mid-Arizona. Didn't go over too well. They built it in a narrow canyon, and the screen was down below, and they had terraces for the cars. The problem was the sewage ponds were down. They were down the road canyon a piece. So if the wind was blowing just right, it wasn't very pleasant to spend time there at the drive-in theater. Dries, you're right. Highway 104 is just, I can imagine on a motorcycle how beautiful that is. Really wonderful. Bill, you were a fortunate person. I can't say enough about Las Vegas, New Mexico. And I think a lot about pulling stakes. I just really like that up there. Brian, thank you. Yeah, that was on the Ozark Trail. They put up a series of those obelisks, those monuments along the Ozark Trails Road. Yeah, I don't remember the exact number, Nolan, but there are thousands of buildings on the National Register of Historic Places. Guys, I am sorry for the cutting in and out. I'm not having any trouble on this end, but God bless technology. If you ever get a chance for another great drive, try Highway. Try the Highway 180. Try Highway 180 from Holbrook down to Deming, New Mexico. Go down through Silver City, New Mexico. Bill, I'm really sorry that there was no sound on that. Oh, and Angela, I'm very sorry to hear that. I hope you liked the plug that we had for you. Frank, I will add that to my list. Frank, thank you for that vote of confidence. Miss Maggie, all the way from Michigan, lots and lots of snow. That's not good. Guys, I'm really sorry that we had, I didn't realize that you were having, I don't know on which end, I'm showing, I ran a speed test this morning on my end, and I've got strong internet. I'm really showing everything running smooth, so I'm not sure where the problem is at. I am so glad everyone could join us this morning, and I hope, invite your friends, and hopefully we'll have better, we won't have technical difficulties next week. We're going to do a Route 66 Odyssey through Arizona. And if you've missed any of these programs, they are archived on our YouTube channel. And so with that said, I guess I should wrap this up. I've been beating my gums here for almost an hour this morning. And as I said, I kind of knew this was going to run a little bit longer. Frank, I'm really glad you enjoyed the presentation. I know it was kind of a caffeinated tour. The Reader's Digest condensed tour of New Mexico, if you will. Keith, thank you. I'll have a great week, and you too. Brian, truly my pleasure. Checker. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you, Angela. About 2 minutes into the program, I think you're going to find a nice surprise. I'll send you a screenshot. And folks, take care. And if there's anything I can do to assist with your travel planning or your promotion, just give me a holler. So that's about it. Thank you again for joining us, and I look forward to next week's visit. Until then,